She was 8 months pregnant, standing barefoot in the snow, 19 degrees, wearing nothing but a silk nightgown. Someone help. Her billionaire husband had just thrown her out of their $30 million penthouse. His mistress was already inside, wearing her bathrobe, sleeping in her bed. No wallet, no coat, no shoes. Just a baby in her belly and ice beneath her feet. He thought she would vanish, thought she would crawl away and die quietly, thought $50,000 would buy her silence forever. He was wrong. Because what Preston Ashworth did not know was that every dollar he had concealed, every document he had forged, every lie he had told over 2 years was about to become the weapon that brought him down. This is the story of how a woman lost everything in a single night and how she reclaimed more than she ever thought possible. Stay until the end, because what happens in that penthouse 3 months later will leave you speechless. This is her story. The grandfather clock in the corner struck 11. 11 chimes, each one ringing through the penthouse like a death toll. Get out. 2 words. Just 2 words. And Margot Sinclair's entire world shattered like ice on concrete. She stood in the living room of the penthouse, their penthouse, the one on 5th Avenue with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, 27 floors above the city, 3,000 square feet of luxury, a home she had spent 2 years making her own, a home she had believed would one day be filled with the sound of children laughing. The Christmas tree they had decorated together 2 weeks earlier twinkled in the corner, red and gold ornaments, white lights, a crystal star on top that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. She remembered Preston lifting her up so she could place that star, remembered him kissing her afterward, telling her this would be the best Christmas of their lives. December 23rd, 8 months pregnant, wearing nothing but a silk nightgown. The silk was ivory. Preston had bought it for her in Paris, their anniversary trip. He had told her she looked like an angel in it, had said he could not wait to see her wearing it while holding their baby. Now he stood by the fireplace, her husband of 3 years, the man who had promised to love and protect her, the man whose child was growing inside her at that very moment, the man she had trusted with her heart, her future, her everything. His face was carved from stone, no emotion, no warmth, nothing but cold, calculated cruelty. His jaw was set, his eyes were flat, dead, like looking at a stranger wearing her husband's face. "Preston, what are you talking about?" Margot asked. Her voice trembled. Her hands moved instinctively to cradle her swollen belly. The baby kicked, once, twice, as if sensing that something was terribly wrong. "I said get out," he repeated, each word precise, clipped, the way he spoke to staff and subordinates, never to her. Never before that night. "Vivian lives here now." Vivian. The name struck Margot like a physical blow. She felt the impact in her chest, in her stomach, in the very core of her being. She turned slowly. Her bare feet pivoted on the cold marble floor. And there she was, standing in the doorway to the master bedroom. Their master bedroom. The room where Margot and Preston had made love, where they had conceived the child now growing inside her, where she had fallen asleep in his arms just the night before. Vivian Cole, 27 years old, blonde hair cascading over her shoulders like spun gold, perfect makeup, perfect figure, the kind of woman who graced magazine covers and red carpets. The kind of woman Margot had always felt inferior to, even when Preston swore she was the most beautiful woman in the world. But what made Margot's blood run cold was not Vivian's presence. It was what she was wearing, Margot's bathrobe, the silk robe with the embroidered initials, M, as in Margot Sinclair. A gift from Preston on their first anniversary. He had presented it to her in bed, had told her it was made from the same silk as her wedding dress, had told her he wanted her to feel like a bride every single morning when she woke up. Now another woman wore it, in her home, in front of her husband, while Margot stood pregnant and vulnerable and utterly exposed. "Hello, Margot," Vivian said. Her voice dripped with false sweetness, the kind of sweetness that coated poison. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But Preston and I are in love. We have been for quite some time now. Quite some time." The words echoed in Margot's mind. How long was quite some time? Months? Years? How many nights had Preston lain beside her while thinking of this woman? How many times had he kissed Margot while wishing for someone else's lips? "Preston," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. Please, I'm 8 months pregnant with your child. Our child. She saw something flicker in his eyes. Just for a moment. Something that might have been doubt, might have been guilt, might have been the last remnants of the man she thought she had married. Then it was gone, replaced by ice. That's not my concern anymore, he said. I've made arrangements. You'll receive a settlement. Now leave. Leave? Margot's voice cracked. The word came out broken. I have nowhere to go. My phone is on your account, my credit cards, everything. At least let me get dressed. Let me pack a bag. Let me call someone. No, Preston cut her off. His hand rose, a dismissive wave, the way one might wave away a fly. You leave now, as you are, as you are. Margot looked down at her bare feet on the cold marble floor, at the thin silk nightgown that did nothing to hide her pregnant belly. The fabric clung to her curves, her swollen breasts, her rounded stomach. She was practically naked, completely vulnerable. Preston, please. Tears began to fall now. She could not stop them. Did not try. It's snowing outside. I'll freeze. The baby will. Should have thought about that before you became so boring, Vivian interrupted. She smiled. Actually smiled. A cruel curve of painted lips. Don't worry, sweetie. I'll take good care of everything you're leaving behind. Margot's hand reached for her pocket, a reflex, looking for her phone. But there was no pocket, no phone, no wallet, no keys. Nothing but silk between her and whatever waited outside. Her mind raced. Her heart pounded. This could not be happening. This was a nightmare. She would wake up any moment. Preston would be beside her. He would hold her and tell her everything was all right. This was just a bad dream. But the cold of the marble beneath her feet was real. The smirk on Vivian's face was real. The emptiness in Preston's eyes was real. Preston nodded toward the door. 2 security guards appeared, men Margot had seen every single day for 3 years. Thompson and Rodriguez. She knew their names, knew their families. Had given them Christmas bonuses just the week before. Thompson's daughter had just started college. Rodriguez's wife was expecting their 3rd child. Now their faces were blank. Professional. Following orders. Gentlemen, Preston said, please escort my ex-wife out of the building. Ex-wife, the word echoed in Margot's mind. What did he mean, ex-wife? They were married. They had a wedding certificate. They had vows. They had 3 years of shared history and a baby on the way. Preston, what are you talking about? She asked. We're not divorced. We're married. I'm your wife. Something flickered across his face again. That same something that might have been guilt. But Vivian stepped forward, placed her hand on his arm. The gesture was possessive, territorial. A cat marking what belonged to it. Not anymore, sweetie, Vivian said. The paperwork went through last week. You're nobody now. The guards took Margot's arms. Thompson on her left, Rodriguez on her right. Their grips were gentle but firm, professional. They guided her toward the elevator. I'm sorry, Mrs. Ashworth, Thompson whispered, so quiet that only she could hear. I'm so sorry. Margot looked back once. Preston had already turned away. He was pouring champagne, 2 glasses. One for him, one for Vivian, celebrating. Vivian waved with her fingertips. A mocking little flutter, like a queen dismissing a servant. The elevator doors closed. Margot's reflection stared back at her from the polished brass walls. A pregnant woman in a nightgown, mascara already running, lips trembling, hair disheveled. A woman who had everything 5 minutes ago. A woman who had nothing now. The elevator descended, floor by floor. The numbers ticking down like a countdown to her new life. 27, 26, 25. Each floor bringing her closer to the cold, to the unknown, to the terrifying reality waiting below. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened with a soft chime. A sound that used to mean, welcome home. Now it meant goodbye forever. Jerome stood behind the front desk, the doorman, 62 years old. He had worked in that building for 30 years. He knew every resident by name. Knew their birthdays, their anniversaries, their children's graduations. He had watched Margot's belly grow month by month, had told her just last week that she was glowing, had asked what they were going to name the baby, had said he could not wait to meet the little one. Now his face was frozen in horror. His dark skin had gone ashen. His kind eyes were wide with disbelief. "Mrs. Ashworth," he whispered, "what's happening? Let me call someone. Let me help. Let me." "She's leaving," Thompson said. His voice was tight, strained. "Mr. Ashworth's orders." Jerome's eyes met Margot's. She saw pain there, helplessness, the expression of a man who wanted to act but knew he would lose his job if he did, the expression of a man caught between conscience and survival. "I'm sorry," he mouthed silently. His lips formed the words, but no sound came out. Margot wanted to tell him it was all right, wanted to tell him not to blame himself. But the guards were moving, guiding her toward the revolving door, pushing her toward the exit. The revolving door spun. Cold air hit Margot like a wall, like a fist, like the universe itself striking her down. Then she was outside on Fifth Avenue in the snow. 19 degrees. That was what the weather report had said that morning. Margot had checked it while planning her day, had noted the cold, had thought about wearing an extra sweater when she went out for her prenatal appointment the next day. 19 degrees with a wind chill of 7. The coldest December in 15 years. Margot's bare feet touched the frozen sidewalk. The pain was immediate, sharp, like walking on broken glass, like stepping onto hot coals. Her feet burned with cold. Her toes screamed in protest. The silk nightgown whipped around her legs. The wind cut through the fabric like it was not even there. Snow swirled through the air. Flakes caught in her hair, melted on her skin, froze against her exposed arms. She started walking. She did not know where. She just walked, one foot in front of the other. Her teeth chattered. Click, 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 like a clock counting down, like a timer on a bomb. People passed her on the street, New Yorkers in their winter coats, shopping bags in hand, holiday cheer on their faces, rushing home to warm apartments and loving families. Some looked at her, a pregnant woman in a nightgown, barefoot in the snow. They looked, and then they looked away. A pregnant woman in a nightgown was not their problem. New York taught you that, taught you to keep to yourself, taught you that getting involved only led to trouble. 1 block. The snow grew deeper. The cold grew worse. 2 blocks. Margot's feet had gone from burning to numb. She could not feel them anymore. Could not feel her toes. Could not feel her heels. Just stumps of ice where her feet used to be. 3 blocks. Her legs were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. The baby kicked frantically inside her. Once, twice, 3 times. As if asking what was happening. As if asking why mommy was so cold. As if begging her to find somewhere warm. "I'm sorry," Margot whispered, her hand pressed against her belly, against the silk that separated her palm from her child. "I'm so sorry, baby. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry." Her vision was blurring, the edges going soft. The cold was seeping into her brain now, making it hard to think, hard to remember where she was going, hard to remember why she was outside in a nightgown in December. She stumbled against a brick wall, a pharmacy. The green cross sign glowed above her head, a beacon of hope she could not reach. The door was 15 feet away. It might as well have been 15 miles. Her legs gave out. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the frozen ground. Snow soaked through her nightgown. Cold seeped into her bones, into her muscles, into the deepest parts of her. "This is how I die," she thought. "On a sidewalk in the snow, 8 months pregnant, while my husband celebrates with his mistress." A woman's voice cut through the fog. "Oh my God, someone call 911. There's a pregnant woman here. She's barely dressed. She's going to freeze to death." Faces appeared above Margot, concerned strangers, cell phones glowing in the darkness, the modern version of torches lighting her way to either rescue or death. "Ma'am, can you hear me? What's your name? How far along are you?" Margot tried to answer, but her lips would not move. Her jaw was frozen. Her tongue was thick and clumsy. Everything was going dark around the edges, like a photograph fading, like a light being slowly turned down. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was the wail of an ambulance. The last thing she felt was a stranger's coat being draped over her shoulders. The last thing she thought was, "I'm sorry, baby, I tried." But Jerome, the doorman, had seen everything. And Jerome had a daughter who worked in forensic accounting. The ambulance rocked gently as it moved through Manhattan traffic. The motion was soothing, almost peaceful, like being cradled. Monitors beeped, steady rhythms, heartbeats. Hers and the baby's, still alive, both of them still fighting. Warm blankets covered Margot's shivering body. So many blankets, layer after layer, a cocoon of warmth after the Arctic nightmare outside. A paramedic held her hand. Human contact. The first gentle touch she had felt since Preston had looked at her with dead eyes. "You're going to be okay," the paramedic said. His name was David. She could read it on his badge. David Chen, paramedic. 20 years of service. He looked kind, tired but kind. The kind of tired that came from witnessing too much suffering. "We're taking you to Mount Sinai," David continued. "Best maternity ward in the city. Your baby's heartbeat is strong, a little stressed but strong. You did well getting found when you did. A few more minutes and we'd be having a very different conversation." A few more minutes. That was how close she had come. That was how thin the line between survival and death. A few more minutes and her baby would have died inside her, would have frozen along with her mother on a Manhattan sidewalk. "My name is Margot," she whispered. Her voice was rough, broken, but working again. The warmth was helping. "Nice to meet you, Margot. I wish it were under better circumstances." David squeezed her hand. "Just keep breathing for me, okay? Nice and slow, in and out. Your body is warming up. Your baby is stabilizing. Everything is going to be okay." She breathed, in and out. The sirens wailed. Snow fell past the ambulance windows. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse she had called home, her husband was pouring champagne for his mistress. The baby kicked again, a reminder that she was not alone. She had never truly been alone. Even when it felt like the whole world had turned its back on her, there was still a life inside her, still a heart beating in rhythm with her own, still a reason to keep going. Margot closed her eyes. Her hand rested on her belly. Whatever came next, she would face it. She had no choice. But as consciousness began to fade again, a thought surfaced, a question she could not answer. How had it come to this? How had she gone from blushing bride to discarded wife in 3 short years? How had the man who promised to love her forever become the man who threw her out to die? She would find out. She had to find out. Because the answers might be the only things that could save her and her baby now. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The sound was constant, irritating, like a mosquito you could not swat, like a reminder that this was a hospital and not a home, that she was a patient and not a person. The smell of antiseptic burned Margot's nostrils, sharp and chemical. The smell of illness and injury and the constant struggle against death. She had encountered that smell before, visiting friends after surgeries, sitting with relatives in their final days. But she had never been the one in the bed, never been the one surrounded by monitors and machines. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried, new life entering the world, families celebrating. That crying should have felt hopeful, should have been a sign that things could be all right. But to Margot, it only reminded her of everything she stood to lose. She lay in a hospital bed, warm now, safe now, but not okay. Not even close to okay. The room was private, a small mercy. She did not have to share her humiliation with strangers, did not have to explain to a curious roommate why a pregnant woman had been found barefoot in the snow on Christmas Eve. Dr. Elaine Whitmore stood at the foot of the bed, 52 years old, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She wore comfortable shoes and a white coat that had seen years of hard work. Her face held the kind of lines that came from a lifetime of delivering good news and bad in equal measure. She had delivered over 3,000 babies in her career. She had seen premature births and stillbirths, had seen mothers triumph and mothers grieve, had encountered every complication the human body could produce. But even she looked troubled now. "Mrs. Ashworth," she began. Her voice was gentle but professional. "Sinclair," Margot interrupted. Her voice was hoarse, raw, like she had swallowed sandpaper. "My name is Margot Sinclair. I kept my maiden name." It seemed important suddenly, claiming her own name, her own identity, reminding herself that she had existed before Preston Ashworth, that she would go on existing after him too. Dr. Whitmore nodded, made a note on her clipboard, did not ask questions. Good doctors knew when not to pry. "Miss Sinclair," she continued, "you came in with severe hypothermia. Your core temperature was 92 degrees. Normal is 98.6. You were 6 degrees below where you needed to be. Your body was shutting down. Your organs were beginning to fail." She paused. "A few more minutes outside and we would be having a very different conversation right now." The same words the paramedic had used. Different doctor, same message. You were dying. The baby, Margot said. The words came out like a prayer. Is the baby? Your baby is fine. Dr. Whitmore's expression softened slightly. The lines around her eyes creased in something like relief. Strong heartbeat, good movement. She's a fighter in there. But you experienced some early contractions from the stress. Your body was trying to deliver because it thought it was dying. We managed to stop the contractions with medication. But you need bed rest at least 72 hours, possibly longer. 72 hours. 3 days of lying in this bed, 3 days of staring at these walls, 3 days of trying to make sense of the impossible. She? Margot asked. The word registered suddenly. You said she. The baby is a girl? Dr. Whitmore smiled. A genuine smile, the first warm expression Margot had seen in hours. Yes, you're having a daughter. I assumed you knew. Perhaps you wanted to be surprised. A daughter, Margot pressed her hand against her belly. All those months she had refused to find out the sex, had wanted to be surprised, had imagined that moment of discovery in the delivery room. Preston had agreed, had said it would be magical, had said he did not care whether it was a boy or a girl as long as the baby was healthy. Preston. The thought of him curdled everything, even this revelation, even this moment of knowing her child. I didn't know, Margot said quietly. Thank you for telling me. Dr. Whitmore checked the monitors, made more notes. Her pen scratched against the clipboard, a comforting sound, the sound of someone paying close attention. The social worker will want to speak with you, she said. Standard procedure for cases like yours. Someone from the domestic violence unit. Domestic violence. The words felt wrong somehow. Domestic violence meant bruises and broken bones, meant fists and fury. Preston had never hit her, never raised his hand, never even raised his voice until that night. But he had thrown her out to die. He had watched her beg for shoes, for a coat, for basic human dignity, and he had turned away. Maybe domestic violence was not only about fists. Maybe it was about power, about cruelty, about the 1,000 ways one person could destroy another without ever leaving a visible mark. I understand, Margot said. And there's someone here to see you, Dr. Whitmore added. A woman named Claudia Reeves. She says she's your lawyer and your friend. Claudia. Thank God. Margot felt tears prick her eyes. Real tears. Tears of relief, the first positive emotion she had experienced since the nightmare began. Please send her in. Dr. Whitmore nodded, squeezed Margot's foot through the blanket in a gesture of quiet comfort. Then she was gone. Moments later, Claudia Reeves swept into the room like a hurricane in high heels. 34 years old, red hair like fire, sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Margot's best friend since their freshman year at Columbia. Her maid of honor at the wedding, the godmother Margot had already chosen for her baby, and one of the finest divorce attorneys in New York City. Claudia took one look at Margot and burst into tears. Oh God, she said. Oh God, Margot, when I got that call, when the nurse told me what happened, I thought you were gone. I thought I was coming to identify your body. She rushed to the bed, grabbed Margot's hand, held it like a lifeline. I'm okay, Margot said, though they both knew it was not entirely true. I'm alive. The baby's alive. That has to count for something. Claudia wiped her eyes, visibly pulled herself together, shifted from friend mode to lawyer mode. Margot could see the transformation, the softness replaced by steel. I've already filed emergency protective orders, Claudia said. Her voice was crisp now, professional. Preston cannot come within 500 feet of you. I'm also filing criminal assault charges first thing tomorrow morning. Will it matter? He has the best lawyers in the city. He has money. He has connections. So do you. Claudia squeezed her hand. You have me, and I have never lost a case I truly cared about. And I have never cared about anything more than this. They sat in silence for a moment. The monitors beeped. The fluorescent lights hummed. Snow fell past the window, visible in the glow of streetlights far below. There's something else, Claudia said. Her voice changed, harder now, preparing to deliver difficult news. The voice she used in court when introducing damning evidence. What? I ran a preliminary check on Preston's assets. Standard procedure in any divorce case. I have contacts at the courthouse, people who owe me favors. Claudia paused, drew a breath. Margot, there's almost nothing in his name. His bank accounts are nearly empty. His investment portfolios have been liquidated. The properties, the cars, the art collection, all of it has been transferred over the past 18 months. Margot stared at her friend, tried to absorb the words, tried to make them make sense. Transferred where? Shell companies, offshore accounts, places I'm still working to trace. The money is gone, or at least hidden. He has been planning this for a long time, Margot. This was not a sudden decision. This was orchestrated, calculated, every move planned months or even years in advance. The affair was not the betrayal. The affair was the distraction. The realization struck Margot like a second blow, worse than the first. Preston had not simply fallen for someone else. He had not been weak or foolish or led astray by a pretty face. He had systematically stripped her of everything while she was distracted by the pregnancy, while she was focused on nursery colors and baby names and the joy of becoming a mother, while she trusted him without question. This was premeditated. This was calculated. This was planned. "How long?" she whispered. "The affair. How long has it been going on?" Claudia hesitated. The hesitation said everything. "I don't have confirmed evidence yet, but based on the financial movements, I'd estimate at least 2 years, maybe longer." 2 years. Margot did the math. They had been married for 3 years. That meant he had been unfaithful for most of their marriage. That meant he had been planning to leave her while holding her hand at the altar, while kissing her on their wedding night, while making a baby with her in their marriage bed. The way she had kept refreshing her banking app came back to her. Refresh, refresh, refresh. Waiting for the deposits that always came late. The deposits she always explained away. He's busy. He has a lot on his mind. He'll transfer the money tomorrow. God, she had been so naive, so trusting, so catastrophically blind. Claudia's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Her face went white. All the color drained away like water down a drain. "What?" Margot asked. "What is it?" Claudia did not answer right away. She just stared at her phone. Her hands trembled slightly. Her jaw tightened. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Margot, Preston filed divorce papers 6 months ago. In Wyoming." "Wyoming? We've never even been to Wyoming. What are you talking about?" "You don't have to be there. Wyoming allows what's called a proxy divorce. One party can file on behalf of both as long as certain documents are submitted. Signatures, consent forms, financial disclosures. But I never signed any consent forms. I never agreed to anything." Claudia looked up, met Margot's eyes. In that moment, Margot saw something she had never seen in her friend before. Fear. "He forged your signature. Claimed you had abandoned the marriage. The decree was finalized last week." The room tilted. The monitors beeped faster. Dr. Whitmore rushed back in, alarmed by the changing readings. "You have been legally divorced for 7 days," Claudia continued. Her voice was shaking now. "You just did not know it." Margot opened her mouth. No sound came out. She tried again. Her lips moved, but no words formed. "I was married yesterday," she finally managed, "and divorced last week." That was the moment she understood that this had not been a sudden affair. This was not a midlife crisis. This was not a man who fell out of love and made a terrible choice. This was a coordinated attack, a systematic destruction of everything she was, everything she had, everything she believed to be true. Her husband had not simply betrayed her. He had hunted her, set traps around her for years, and she had stepped into every single one. She had never seen it coming, never suspected, never doubted. And that was exactly what he had been counting on. "I'm not crazy," she said quietly. The words were for herself as much as anyone. Her first whispered declaration of sanity in a world that had gone mad. "I know what I saw. I know what happened. I'm not crazy." Claudia squeezed her hand harder. "No, you're not crazy. You're the victim of a sociopath, and we're going to make him pay." 3 days passed in the hospital, 3 days of monitoring, 3 days of bed rest, 3 days of Margot staring at the ceiling, counting the holes in the acoustic tiles, trying to make sense of the impossible. The ceiling tiles had 147 holes each. She counted them twice, then a third time. The repetition was soothing. Numbers were solid, reliable. Numbers did not lie, unlike husbands. The baby moved constantly now, kicking, turning, stretching, as if sensing the mother's distress, as if trying to remind her that at least one thing in her life was still real, still true, still hers. "I'm here," Margot whispered to her belly. Her hand rested on the swell, on the thin hospital gown that had replaced her ruined nightgown. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens, we face it together. The baby kicked in response. A strong kick, a fighter's kick. Just as Dr. Whitmore had said, Claudia came every day, sometimes twice. She brought case files and legal documents. She brought updates on the criminal investigation. She brought coffee from the good place on Lexington Avenue because the hospital coffee tasted like burnt regret. But mostly she brought the pieces of a puzzle that Margot was still struggling to put together. Wyoming allows proxy divorces, Claudia explained during one of those visits. It was the fourth time they had gone over it, but Margot needed to hear it again, needed to understand how it had been possible. But they require specific documentation. Proof that both parties consent, signatures on multiple forms, and Preston forged all of them? Every single one. Consent forms, financial disclosures, property waivers. He signed your name on everything, claimed you had abandoned the marriage, and agreed to divorce without contest. How is that legal? How did no one verify it? Claudia sighed, the sigh of a lawyer who knew the system was broken but had to work within it anyway. Wyoming is a quick divorce state. They process thousands of filings every year. They don't have the resources to check every signature. They rely on the honesty of the filing parties. She laughed bitterly. Honesty and Preston Ashworth. Two things that don't belong in the same sentence. So the divorce is real? I'm actually divorced? The divorce is on file. It's been recorded, finalized. But it is not legitimate. It is fraud. Multiple counts of fraud. Once we prove the forgery, we can have the whole thing overturned. Once, if, the words hung in the air. Nothing was certain. Nothing was guaranteed. Preston had resources, connections, lawyers who had been bending the law for the Ashworth family for generations. What did Margot have? A hospital bed, a best friend, and a baby who deserved better than this. What happens now? We build our case, Margot. We document everything, gather evidence, find witnesses. Claudia pulled out a legal pad, yellow paper covered in her neat handwriting. I need you to tell me everything, every detail about your marriage, every suspicious moment you pushed aside, every sign you explained away. Margot closed her eyes. Memories flooded back, unbidden, unwanted, but impossible to stop. Their wedding day, 3 years ago, June. The sky had been impossibly blue, the kind of blue that only existed in movies and fairy tales. A garden ceremony at the Ashworth family estate in Connecticut. 300 guests. $10,000 worth of flowers. A dress that had been featured in Vogue. Preston at the altar, tears in his eyes as she walked toward him. His voice breaking as he spoke his vows, the voice of a man overwhelmed by love, the voice of a man who meant every word, or so she had believed. Everything I have is yours, he had said. His hand in hers, his eyes locked on hers. My heart, my soul, my fortune, my future. All of it belongs to you now. From this day forward, we are one. Lies, every single word. Even then, even standing at the altar, he was probably already planning this, already calculating how much he could take from her, already choosing which woman would replace her. The pregnancy announcement came next, 6 months ago. They had been trying for a year, doctors, specialists, fertility treatments, the stress of wanting something so desperately and being denied. And then, finally, the test came back positive. Preston had wept, actually wept. He held her in his arms and told her this was the happiest moment of his life, that she had given him everything he ever wanted, that he could not wait to be a father. 6 months ago, the same time he filed for divorce in Wyoming. All of it was a lie, she said, every tear, every word, every touch and kiss and promise. While I was picking out cribs, he was picking out my replacement. While I was growing his child, he was moving his money. God, the signs were everywhere. She thought about the trip to Aspen the previous January, the skiing weekend with his college friends, the one she had not been invited to. Business only, darling. You'd be bored. Just the guys talking investments and drinking too much bourbon. She had believed him, had been grateful that he did not expect her to sit through dull financial conversations, had used the weekend to shop for baby furniture with Claudia. What had actually happened in Aspen? Had Vivian been there? Had they spent the weekend together while Margot looked at changing tables and debated the merits of different diaper brands? She thought about his new attorney, a woman he had begun meeting with privately the previous spring. Estate planning, boring stuff. You don't need to be involved. Long meetings, late nights, weekends away, estate planning. That was what he had called it, and she had believed him. Had trusted that he was planning for their future. Had never asked questions because wives were not supposed to question their husbands about money. God, the signs had been everywhere, flashing in bright light, screaming that something was wrong, and she had walked right past every single one, eyes closed, heart open, trusting completely. She thought about the prenuptial agreement she had signed without reading, the day before the wedding. Preston's lawyers had presented it, hundreds of pages of legal language. Preston had dismissed it with a wave of his hand. Just standard stuff, he had said, protecting both of us. I know you're not marrying me for my money, darling, but my family insists. Humor them. She had signed without reading, without asking, because she trusted him, because she loved him, because she believed that people who loved you did not need contracts. She thought about his mother's smile at Thanksgiving, sitting across the table, sipping wine, watching Margot with knowing eyes, the smile of a cat watching a mouse. Dorothy had known. Of course she had known. Mothers always knew. And she had sat there watching Margot plan for a future that was already dead, relishing every moment. The hospital sheets scratched against Margot's legs. The antiseptic smell burned her nostrils. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a constant irritating hum. Everything was too bright, too sharp, too real. I remember all of it now, she said quietly. Her eyes opened and met Claudia's. Every sign I ignored, every lie I believed, every moment I should have questioned and did not. Claudia wrote quickly. Her pen flew across the yellow paper. This is good, she said. All of this is useful. It establishes a pattern, shows premeditation, demonstrates that Preston was orchestrating this for years while you had no idea. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dorothy Ashworth entered. She moved as though she owned the hospital, as though she owned every room she walked into, as though she owned the world itself and was merely allowing others to live in it. 68 years old. Silver hair perfectly styled. A cashmere coat that cost more than most people's cars. Pearls at her throat. Pearls that had been in the Ashworth family for 5 generations. Pearls that Margot had been told would someday be hers. Margot, Dorothy said. Not Mrs. Ashworth, not dear, not darling, just Margot. Cold and clipped, the way one might address someone in their employ. Dorothy. Margot's voice was steady. That surprised her. Where had this calm come from? This steel? We need to speak privately. Dorothy glanced at Claudia with barely concealed disdain. Tell your friend to leave. Claudia is my lawyer. She stays. Dorothy's eyebrow rose, one perfect silver arch. How very modern of you. What do you want, Dorothy? The older woman settled into the chair by the window, not the chair by the bed, as far from Margot as she could be while remaining in the room, as if Margot's situation might be contagious. I told Preston this would be messy, Dorothy said. She examined her manicured nails, perfect polish. Not a chip in sight. You should have been more reasonable, accepted the settlement. Margot's heart stopped, then started again racing. What settlement? Dorothy's smile faltered slightly, the expression of someone who had just revealed more than intended, but she recovered quickly. She was practiced at this, had spent a lifetime saying cruel things with a pleasant face. Oh, he didn't tell you about that either? She waited, making Margot wait, enjoying the power of the pause. The settlement was $50,000. For the baby, for your silence, for disappearing completely. Preston thought it was more than generous, all things considered. $50,000 for her baby, for her silence, for pretending the last 3 years had never happened. $50,000 from a man worth hundreds of millions. The insult was almost worse than the amount. And if I don't accept? Dorothy's smile turned predatory. Then we pursue other options, mental instability, unfit motherhood. The courts tend to side with the parent who can provide the most stable environment. She gestured at the hospital room around them. And we both know that's not you. A pregnant woman found barefoot in the snow, hospitalized for hypothermia, with delusions about her marriage. The picture paints itself. Margot felt something shift inside her. The shock was fading. The hurt was fading. Something harder was taking its place. Something with teeth. Something with claws. Get out. Dorothy's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? Get out of my room. Get out of this hospital. Tell your son that $50,000 is an insult. Tell him I don't want his money. I want justice, and I will get it, Dorothy. I will take everything he has, everything your precious family has built, and I will make certain everyone knows exactly what kind of people the Ashworths truly are. Justice? Dorothy laughed. The sound was ugly. Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea who you're dealing with. The Ashworths have been in this city for 6 generations. We own judges, we own journalists, we own anyone who matters. You're nobody. A nobody from nowhere who got lucky enough to catch my son's attention for a few years. And now your luck has run out. Leave, now. Dorothy stood, smoothed her coat, walked to the door, then paused and looked back. One final shot. The baby, she said. If it's a boy, we may reconsider our position. The Ashworth name needs an heir. We could come to some arrangement, custody in exchange for financial security. Think about it. Over my dead body. Dorothy smiled. That can be arranged too, dear. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. The sound was final, absolute, like a cell door closing. Claudia exhaled slowly. That woman is a piece of work. She's a monster. They're all monsters. Margot's hands were shaking, adrenaline and anger coursing through her. I'm having a girl, by the way. Not that it matters to them. They wouldn't get her even if she were a boy. They won't get her at all. Claudia nodded, made more notes. The settlement money, she said. We should find out what happened to it. Does it matter? It might. If Preston can prove he offered you a settlement and you refused, it could complicate things, make you appear unreasonable. Margot laughed. The sound surprised her, bitter and hollow. I refused because I was never offered anything. I didn't even know it existed until 2 minutes ago. I know, but Preston will lie. He'll claim he told you and that you rejected it out of spite. Claudia looked up. I need to find out where that money went, whether it was ever actually set aside at all. She stepped out. The door closed. Margot was alone. The ceiling tiles stared down at her. 147 holes each. She counted them again. The baby kicked. The settlement had been $50,000 for the baby, for her silence, for vanishing completely, and Preston had already spent it, bribing the Wyoming judge. That was what Claudia discovered an hour later. The settlement money was gone, used to grease the wheels of the fraudulent divorce, to pay off officials, to make the paperwork disappear into a sea of similar filings. Margot was not just betrayed. She had been robbed of even the insulting money they had planned to throw at her. I'm not crazy, she thought. This actually happened. I was married yesterday and divorced last week, and they think they can make me disappear with $50,000 and some threats. They were wrong. God help them. They were so wrong. Day 4 in the hospital, Margot was finally stable enough to be discharged. The doctors had done their work, the monitors had recorded their data, the paperwork had been filed. But discharged to where? Her phone had been disconnected. Preston's account. She had discovered this when Claudia brought a charger and she powered up her device. The screen lit up, the apps loaded, but every call went to a dead line. Every text bounced back undeliverable. Her credit cards had been canceled, his name on all of them. She had discovered this when a nurse tried to process her insurance information. Declined. Every single one. Her bank account had been emptied. A joint account, but somehow only he had access. She had discovered this when Claudia logged into her online banking and found a balance of $0.00. She tried to log into her email. The laptop Claudia had brought sat open on the hospital bed. Her fingers knew the password by heart, had typed it thousands of times. Password incorrect. She tried again. Maybe she had mistyped. Maybe her fingers were still numb from the cold. Password incorrect. This account has been secured. Her Instagram, deleted. She searched her own name. No results found. Her Facebook, deactivated. The profile she had maintained for 15 years, the photos and memories and connections, all of it gone. Her entire digital life had been erased, like she never existed, like she was already a ghost. Like Margot Sinclair had been nothing more than a figment of the collective imagination. She sat in the hospital bed and stared at the blank screens, the empty inboxes, the dead connections. This was methodical, organized. Someone had gone through every corner of her life and deleted it, wiped her from existence, made her invisible. Preston, or his lawyers, or his mother, or all of them together. A family project. Erasing the inconvenient wife. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. A nervous young woman entered. Late 20s, brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Large eyes behind even larger glasses. She clutched a folder to her chest like a shield, like armor against a world that frightened her. "Mrs. Ashworth?" she began, then caught herself. Her cheeks flushed pink. "I mean, Miss Sinclair? I'm Rosie Patterson. My dad is Jerome, the doorman at your building. Well, at Mr. Ashworth's building now, I guess. I mean, it was always technically his building, but you lived there, so I always thought of it as yours too." "I remember Jerome," Margot said gently. The girl's nervousness was almost endearing. "He was kind to me. Even at the end." Rosie relaxed slightly, her death grip on the folder loosening. "He told me what happened, what he saw. He's been sick about it ever since. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. He wanted to stop them, but he knew he'd lose his job, and then he couldn't support his family, and my mom is sick, and the insurance is through his work." "It's okay," Margot raised her hand gently. "I don't blame Jerome. I don't blame you. No one could have done anything." Preston made sure of that. Rosie nodded, swallowed hard, moved closer to the bed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "My dad sent me here because of what I do, what I found." She opened the folder. Spreadsheets, bank records, corporate filings, dense columns of numbers and names. "Miss Sinclair, I'm a forensic accountant, junior level at Morrison & Klein. It's a large firm. We handle corporate investigations, fraud cases, that kind of work." Margot's heart began to beat faster. "And I've been tracking some unusual transactions for a client. Shell companies with complicated structures, money moving in strange patterns, flowing through jurisdictions that don't ask questions." Rosie's eyes darted to the door, making sure they were alone. "They trace back to Ashworth Holdings. To your husband. I wasn't supposed to look deeper. My supervisor told me to stay in my lane, said the client only wanted a surface review. But I couldn't stop myself. The numbers were too strange." She spread the papers across the bed. Margot looked at them. The columns meant nothing to her. She had never been skilled with numbers, had trusted Preston to manage the finances. Another mistake. "Oh, what am I looking at?" "Evidence." Rosie's voice was steadier now. She was in her element. Numbers were her language. "Miss Sinclair, your husband moved $200 million into offshore accounts over the past 2 years. $200 million, spread across 17 shell companies in 9 different countries. $200 million. Margot's mind struggled to hold the number. She had known Preston was wealthy, had known the Ashworth fortune was substantial, but $200 million in hidden assets was beyond anything she had imagined. "There's more," Rosie continued. She shuffled the papers, found the document she was looking for. Her finger traced a column. The accounts, the shell companies, the offshore structures, they're not in his name. Whose name are they in? A long pause. Rosie finally looked up, met Margot's eyes. In her gaze, something like pity, something like fear. "Yours, they're in your name, your social security number, your date of birth, your signature on every document." Margot felt the blood drain from her face. The room tilted. The monitors beeped faster. "But I never signed anything," she said. Her voice was distant, hollow. "I didn't even know these accounts existed. I've never seen any of these documents." "I know. The signatures are clearly forged. The exact same handwriting on everything. Not even slight variations, the way you'd see with authentic signatures. It's a poor forgery if you look closely. But no one was looking closely, because no one was ever meant to find these accounts at all." Rosie's voice dropped even lower, almost inaudible. "Miss Sinclair, I think I understand what he's doing. If anyone investigates the missing money, if the IRS starts asking questions, if any authority starts looking at Ashworth Holdings, I'm the criminal," Margot said. Her voice was flat, dead. The voice of someone who had just watched their last hope fade. "I'm the money launderer. I'm the tax evader. I'm the one who goes to prison while he claims ignorance, while he tells everyone I did it all behind his back, while he and his girlfriend drink champagne in my old home. Margot was not just betrayed, she had been framed. He used her name, her identity. He did not just throw her out, he set her up to take the fall. The anger came then. Not hurt, not confusion, not shock, not despair. Anger, pure and clean and righteous. The anger of someone who had been wronged in every possible way. The anger of someone with nothing left to lose. I didn't just marry the wrong man, she said. I married a predator, and predators can be hunted. Why are you telling me this? Margot asked. You could lose your job. You could get into serious trouble for sharing confidential client information. You could face criminal charges yourself. Rosie smiled. A small, fierce expression. The smile of someone who had made a decision and was at peace with it. My dad taught me something. He said the wealthy people in that building think they're better than everyone else. Think they can do whatever they want because they have money. They look right through him, like he's furniture, like he isn't even human. She paused, collected herself. But money doesn't make you good. Character makes you good. And character means doing the right thing even when it's hard, even when it's frightening, even when it could cost you everything. Your father sounds like a wise man. He is. He's the best man I know. Rosie closed her folder. I made copies of everything for you, for your lawyer. It's not enough to prove the forgery on its own. You'll need handwriting experts, financial forensics, a deep investigation. But it's a start. It's evidence. It's something. The door opened. Claudia entered, followed by Dr. Whitmore. Their faces were carefully neutral, the faces of people preparing to deliver unwelcome news. Good news and bad news, Claudia said. She nodded to Rosie, acknowledged her presence without asking questions. Those questions could wait. Good news is you're cleared for discharge. Baby is stable, you're stable. And the bad news? Claudia and Dr. Whitmore exchanged a glance, the kind of look that said neither wanted to be the one to speak. There's a shelter, Dr. Whitmore finally said. Her voice was gentle but straightforward. Street Ann's house for women, they have a bed available. It's clean. It's safe. They have medical support for expectant mothers. A shelter. Margot was being discharged to a homeless shelter, 8 months pregnant, a former billionaire's wife, living in a penthouse worth $30 million fewer than 48 hours ago. Now homeless. Now penniless. Now nothing. I'm so sorry, Claudia said. Her voice cracked, the lawyer's composure finally breaking. I've called everyone I know, every favor I'm owed. But it's Christmas week. Hotels are fully booked. Apartments aren't available on short notice. My place is being renovated. There's no heat or running water. I would take you to my mother's, but she's in Florida for the winter, and… It's okay, Margot heard herself speak, calm, steady. Surprising everyone in the room, including herself. A shelter is fine, it's temporary. Everything is temporary. The words felt hollow, but she said them anyway. Because what was the alternative? Crying, screaming, falling apart? She had a baby to protect, a daughter. A little girl who would need a mother who was strong, who was capable, who did not crumble when things became difficult. Margot could fall apart later, when she was alone, when no one was watching. Rosie stepped forward. I'll come visit. Bring more documents. Keep digging into the shell companies. Claudia nodded. I'll come every day. We'll build the case. We'll fight this. Dr. Whitmore squeezed Margot's hand. I'll check in on you. Make sure the baby stays healthy. You have my personal number. Call anytime, day or night. These women, these strangers, some barely known to her. They were more family to her now than the man she had married. More support than the Ashworths had ever offered. Perhaps she had lost everything. But perhaps she was finding something new. Street Ann's house for women occupied a converted brownstone on 42nd Street. 3 stories. Narrow hallways, the smell of cooking food and cleaning supplies. The sound of women talking, children playing, televisions murmuring behind closed doors. 15 other women lived there, each with her own story, each with her own version of disaster. The woman who had fled a violent husband, the woman who had lost everything to addiction, the woman who had simply run out of luck, the woman who had trusted the wrong person. Margot fit right in. The newest member of a club no one wanted to join. Her bed was narrow, the mattress thin, the sheets worn soft from 1,000 previous sleepers, but they were clean. Everything was clean. That was something. The room she shared had 4 beds, 4 women at various stages of recovery, various stages of starting over. They nodded to her when she arrived, did not ask questions. Privacy was respected here. Trauma was assumed. The shelter smelled like industrial cleaner and quiet grief. The heating rattled and clanked through the walls like a prisoner trying to escape. The woman in the next bed coughed all night, harsh, racking sounds that echoed in the dark. But the blankets were warm, and someone had left a chocolate on Margot's pillow. A small kindness in a small place. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. Margot's designer hospital gown was gone, donated to some hospital charity bin. She wore donated clothes now. A stretched sweater in a color that did not suit her, a green that made her look sallow. Maternity jeans that fit badly, loose at the waist, tight at the thighs, sneakers 2 sizes too large from the donation bin. She stuffed the toes with newspaper to make them wearable. Her Cartier wedding ring sat in her pocket, the one thing Preston had not taken. A 4-carat flawless diamond, worth more than everything else she owned combined. Worth more than a year of rent in most apartments. She could not bring herself to sell it yet, not because she still loved Preston. That love had died in the snow outside the penthouse, frozen solid and shattered into a million pieces. But because selling it would mean admitting defeat, would mean accepting that her old life was truly gone, would mean acknowledging that she was never going back. Day 5 in the shelter, Claudia arrived with a laptop and a grim expression. They sat in the common room, plastic chairs, a donated table with a wobbly leg. Other women moved around them, giving space, understanding that serious conversations required privacy even in public places. You need to see this. Claudia opened the laptop and angled the screen so only Margot could see. A news website. The headline hit her like a physical blow. Billionaire Preston Ashworth III speaks out about troubled marriage. Below the headline, a photograph. Preston looking handsome and sympathetic, wearing a cashmere sweater she had bought him for his birthday, sitting in what appeared to be his study. The study in their penthouse, the room where he had proposed to her, where they had talked about baby names, where she had felt safest in the world. Claudia scrolled down. Preston's words filled the screen. His statement was carefully crafted, lawyer approved, designed to draw sympathy. It's been a difficult time, he had told the reporter. My ex-wife, I should say, struggled with mental health issues throughout our marriage. I tried to help her. I really did. But some people cannot be helped. Some people don't want to be helped. Mental health issues. Margot had never experienced any mental health difficulties in her life. No depression, no anxiety, no diagnosed conditions of any kind. But who would believe that now? Who would take her word against his? The statement continued, Preston's voice growing more pained, more sympathetic. She showed signs of postpartum psychosis even before the baby was born. Paranoia, delusions, convinced that people were plotting against her. I begged her to see a doctor. I offered to pay for the best psychiatrist in the world, but she refused. Postpartum psychosis, before the birth. That was not even medically possible. Postpartum meant after birth. It was literally in the name, but the reporter had not questioned it, had not pushed back, had simply recorded the lies and published them as truth. When she left the apartment that night, the statement went on, I begged her to stay, to let me call a doctor, but she was having an episode, convinced I was trying to hurt her. She ran out into the snow before I could stop her. I called the police. I called hospitals. I was frantic with worry. Lies, every word. He had thrown her out using security. He had watched while she begged for shoes. He had turned away as she stumbled down the street. He had not called anyone. Had probably opened champagne the moment she was out of sight. But the article mentioned none of that. The article painted him as a victim, a devoted husband who had done everything right. A man moving forward with grace and dignity. There's more, Claudia said quietly. She scrolled further. Another photograph appeared. Preston and Vivian, smiling, his hand resting on her stomach. A stomach that was clearly, visibly pregnant. A small but unmistakable curve beneath her designer dress. Ashworth and his new partner, Vivian Cole, are expecting their first child together. It was unexpected, Ashworth reportedly said of the pregnancy. But sometimes life gives you exactly what you need when you need it. After everything I've been through, Vivian has been a breath of fresh air. She's kind, she's stable, she's everything I need. Everything I need. The words burned like acid. Vivian was pregnant too. 4 months along based on the size of the curve, Preston's timeline had never been about falling out of love. It had been about securing an heir who was not legally tied to Margot. He's been planning this for years, Margot whispered. He knew exactly what he wanted. A new partner, a new baby, and me gone. Discredited, unable to fight back. The news reached social media within hours. Margot's photograph, a hospital image that had been leaked by someone, her face pale and shocked and fragile, appeared alongside Vivian's glowing pregnancy announcement. The contrast was deliberate, designed to make Margot look broken and Vivian look blessed. Comments poured in. Margot read them because she could not stop herself, because the pain had a terrible gravity that pulled her in. Gold digger got what she deserved. She probably made up the whole Snow story for sympathy. Preston is such a good man, he deserves better than a crazy wife. Classic gold digger trying to ruin her ex's reputation. Vivian is so beautiful, I can see why he upgraded. She should close the laptop, she knew that. Reading the comments was like pressing on a bruise, like picking at a wound. It only made things worse. But part of her needed to know. Needed to see how completely Preston had won this round. Needed to understand the full scale of what she was fighting against. A hand touched her shoulder. One of the other shelter residents. An older woman named Denise, 55 years old. Gray hair cut short and practical. Kind eyes that had witnessed too much sorrow. 5 grandchildren she had not seen in 3 years because of a son who had chosen his addictions over his family. Her own story of betrayal and loss. Her own version of the same nightmare. Don't read that garbage, Denise said gently. They don't know you. They don't know what really happened. They're just people on the internet saying whatever makes them feel better about their own sad lives. Someday they'll find out the truth. They always do. Margot closed the laptop. What if they don't? What if he wins? Denise smiled, a sad smile, but with steel behind it. The steel of a woman who had survived. Then you make them know the truth. You fight until they can't ignore you anymore. You get back up every time they knock you down. And if you lose anyway? She shrugged. Her shoulders rolled with the resignation of experience. At least you'll know you didn't go down easy. Margot's phone rang. The burner phone Claudia had bought for her. Cheap. Basic. The kind of phone you bought when you had nothing and no one. Unknown number on the screen, she answered. Hello? A woman's voice, old, sharp, commanding. Familiar somehow, though Margot could not place it. Margot Jane Sinclair. It was not a question. It was a statement, a declaration. Your mother was Louise Sinclair. Your grandmother was my sister. You've never met me because your mother and I had a falling out before you were born. But I've been watching. And that man just made a very powerful enemy. Margot's hand trembled. Hope felt like fear when you had forgotten the difference. Who is this? My name is Harriet Monroe, and I'm worth more than your husband ever dreamed of being. A pause. Margot's mind raced. Her mother had never mentioned a sister, had never spoken of any family at all. She had grown up believing she had no one. I've been watching the news, Harriet continued. That interview Preston gave, the way he's painting you, it reminded me of something that happened to me 60 years ago. A man who thought he could throw me away because I was no longer useful. Another pause. When Harriet spoke again, her voice was hard as diamonds. He was wrong, very, very wrong. Why are you calling me? Because that man just made a very powerful enemy, me. And because watching the Ashworths squirm will be better than any Christmas present. And because family is family, even when they're strangers. Her voice softened slightly. Just a fraction. Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you. The line went dead. Margot stared at the phone, her hands still shaking, her heart still pounding. Family. She had family. Someone out there who had been watching, someone who knew her mother, someone who might be able to help. For the first time in 5 days, something other than despair stirred in Margot's chest. Hope, fragile and terrifying. But hope, nonetheless. The town car pulled up outside street. Anne's house at exactly 3 o'clock the following afternoon. Black as midnight, spotless. The kind of vehicle that cost more per month than most people earned in a year. The kind of car that looked alien on that block. A Rolls-Royce among bicycles. The door opened. A tiny woman emerged. 4 feet 11 inches of pure determination wrapped in a Chanel suit. Gray wool with cream piping. Classic. Expensive. The kind of ensemble that spoke of money without shouting it. Silver hair and a sharp bob, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, a face that had lived 80 years and was still hungry for more. Harriet Monroe walked into the shelter as though she owned it, as though she owned every space she entered, as though the world existed for her convenience. She probably could have bought the building, could have bought the whole block, could have purchased the entire neighborhood if she had wanted to. Margot, she stopped directly in front of the donated chair where Margot sat. Her eyes moved across her face, her belly, her terrible borrowed clothes, taking inventory, assessing. Harriet. Margot was not sure what else to say. She had not had family in 20 years and had forgotten how it was supposed to feel. "You look like your mother," Harriet said finally. Her voice was matter-of-fact, not sentimental. "Same stubborn chin, same defiant eyes. Louise and I fought like cats, but I always respected her backbone. Good to see you inherited it. My mother never mentioned you." "She wouldn't have. We didn't part on good terms. She thought I was too ruthless, too focused on money and power. She wanted softness, poetry, art, all those beautiful and seemingly useless things." Harriet's voice softened slightly. "She was probably right. But right now, ruthless is exactly what you need." Margot did not argue, could not argue. The softer path had led her here, to a homeless shelter, pregnant and broke and alone, wearing donated clothes and eating donated food and sleeping in a donated bed. So perhaps ruthless was worth a try. "I have a hotel suite," Harriet continued. "The Waldorf Astoria, 2 bedrooms, 24-hour room service, security. A view of the city that will remind you what you're fighting for. You'll stay there until this is resolved." "I can't accept charity." Harriet's eyebrow rose. One perfect silver arch, the same expression Dorothy Ashworth had made, but without the cruelty. With something like approval instead. "Who said anything about charity? This is a loan. You'll sign a contract. You'll pay back every cent with interest when this is over." She pulled a cocktail napkin from her pocket. Words were written on it in elegant cursive. "Sign here." Margot looked at the napkin, looked at Harriet, then reached for the pen Harriet was already holding out. "I'm not a charity case," she said as she signed. The words became her promise to herself. "I'm an investment, and I will make this worth your while." "Damn right you will." Harriet tucked the napkin back into her pocket. "Now let's get out of this depressing place. We have a war to plan." The Waldorf suite was everything Margot had lost and more. Silk sheets, marble bathrooms, a living room larger than the entire shelter common room. A view of the city that sparkled like diamonds scattered on black velvet. Margot stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the lights, at the Christmas decorations, at the life happening below. Just a week ago, she had been one of those lights, one of those lives, safe and warm and oblivious to how quickly everything could change. The team gathered that evening. Claudia brought case files. Rosie brought financial records. Harriet made phone calls, summoned people, called in favors. Her personal attorney arrived at 6 o'clock sharp. Her name was Constance Whitfield, 58 years old, iron gray hair and a severe bun, a face like carved granite, a reputation that made opposing lawyers physically flinch. She had not lost a case in 22 years. "Let me make sure I understand the situation," Constance said, reviewing Rosie's documents. Her voice was ice and precision. "Preston Ashworth has hidden approximately $212 million in offshore accounts. 17 shell companies across 9 countries. Real estate in Dubai, Monaco, and Singapore. And all of it is registered in Miss Sinclair's name. Without her knowledge or consent," Claudia added. "The signatures are forged, clearly forged, if you compare them to her authentic handwriting. And the Wyoming divorce? Also forged, also invalid. The signature on the consent documents does not match her real signature." Constance smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had just spotted an opening. "This is fraud, multiple counts, tax evasion, identity theft, wire fraud across international borders, forgery, conspiracy, perjury, since he lied under oath on the divorce filing." She looked at Margot. "Your husband didn't just betray you, Miss Sinclair. He committed federal crimes using your identity. Can we prove it?" "We can do better than prove it." Constance leaned forward, her eyes bright. "The interesting thing about fraud is the paper trail. Preston believed he was being clever by hiding his money in your name. He thought he was setting you up to take the fall. But he overlooked one crucial detail. What's that? If the money is in your name, legally, it's your money. The fraud clause in any prenuptial agreement states that any attempt to defraud the other party results in full forfeiture of assets to the victim. Constance's smile widened. Preston didn't steal from you. He transferred his entire fortune to you, in writing, with documentation. Margot's breath caught. Are you saying? I'm saying that technically, legally, you already own everything he's been trying to hide. We just have to make the courts agree. Silence fell over the room. 4 women. 4 different perspectives. One impossible hope. Preston did not just steal from Margot. He made her the legal owner of everything he wanted to conceal, which meant technically, legally, it was already hers. The irony was almost beautiful. But Margot had learned not to hope too quickly, not to trust that things would work out, not to assume that justice was inevitable. What happens now? She asked. Before Constance could answer, there was a knock at the suite door. A process server stood in the hallway, a young man with an uncomfortable expression, doing his job. Miss Margot Sinclair? Yes. He handed her a thick envelope. You've been served. Margot opened the envelope. Legal documents, dense paragraphs, technical language, the work of expensive lawyers with expensive vocabularies. But the summary was plain enough. Preston Ashworth III was suing Margot Sinclair for defamation, fraud, and attempted extortion. He was claiming she had threatened him, that she was mentally unstable, that she was a danger to her unborn child and should be institutionalized for her own protection. The papers reached the press within hours, Margot's face on every gossip site, the narrative solidifying. Unstable pregnant woman versus noble billionaire victim. Preston had moved first. The war had begun. That night, Margot lay in the bathtub, fully clothed, hot water running over her swollen belly, steam rising around her face like fog. The baby kicked against her ribs, once, twice. Like a protest, like a promise. She stayed there for an hour, then 2, until the water went cold and the steam disappeared, until her fingers pruned and her bones ached. Sometimes the body needed time to process what the mind already knew. Tomorrow she would fight. Tonight she just breathed. 3 in the morning. The hotel suite was dark and silent. Everyone had gone home. The case files were scattered across the coffee table. The laptop screen glowed blue in the darkness. Margot sat alone in the living room. The city sparkled below. 8 million people sleeping. 8 million lives continuing without her. The world turning without pause. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Preston's face, saw the emptiness in his gaze, saw the smirk on Vivian's lips, saw the snow swirling around her bare feet. Her fingers typed before her mind could stop them. What happens to babies born to homeless mothers? The search results appeared. Statistics, studies, cautionary stories. The system designed to protect children but so often failing them. Children removed from mothers who loved them. Children placed in foster care. Children lost in bureaucracy. Custody rights for wealthy fathers versus low-income mothers. More results, more statistics. Wealthy parents won custody battles at significantly higher rates. Judges favored stability. Stability meant money. Money meant resources. Resources meant Preston. Can a man take a newborn from its mother? The answers were not comforting. She closed the laptop, opened it again, typed more. Signs you married a sociopath. The checklist appeared. Margot read it, checking off items silently. Superficial charm, check. Grandiose sense of self, check. Pathological lying, check. Lack of remorse, check. Manipulative behavior, check, check, check. How long does it take to recover from betrayal? Years, the article said, years. Some people never recovered. Some carried the wounds forever. Scars that faded but never disappeared. Is it possible to fight a billionaire and win? The answer was not encouraging. 3 in the morning searches, the desperate questions of someone who had lost everything. The prayers typed into a search engine because there was no one else to ask. The intrusive thoughts came then, the ones she had been fighting off for days, the ones she was afraid to acknowledge, the ones that crept in when her defenses were down. What if they're right? What if I am unstable? She pushed the thought away. It came back. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough? She pushed harder. The thought pushed back. What if my baby would be better off with someone else? What if Preston could give her a stable home, a wealthy family, everything I can't provide? No, don't think that. But what if? What if I'm not strong enough? What if I lose? What if Preston takes Louise? What if I never see her again? What if everything I'm fighting for is pointless? What if I'm just like my mother, running from everything, failing everyone? She picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over Claudia's number, then Harriet's, then no one's. The darkness pressed in. The silence was total. For the first time in her life, Margot understood how completely alone a person could feel in a city of 8 million people. The baby kicked, a strong kick, as if to say, I'm here, don't forget me. Margot's hand pressed against her belly, against the life inside her. The hardest part isn't the fighting, she realized. It's believing I deserve to win. A knock at the door. She did not move at first. Who would knock at 3 in the morning? She was not expecting anyone. The front desk would not send someone up without calling first. Another knock. Gentle, patient. She walked to the door, her bare feet silent on the carpet, looked through the peephole. A hotel employee stood in the hallway. Room service uniform, silver tray, young face, kind eyes. She opened the door. I didn't order anything, she said. Compliments of Miss Monroe, the employee replied. He set the tray on the entry table. She called down about an hour ago, said you might be hungry and didn't want to bother anyone. He left. The door clicked shut. Margot lifted the silver dome. Soup. Simple tomato soup with crusty bread. Comfort food, grandmother food. The kind of meal that said someone cared whether you ate. A note sat beside the bowl. Shaky handwriting on hotel stationery. Elegant but imperfect. My granddaughter showed me how to use the hotel app. Technology is terrifying but useful. Eat something. Sleep. Tomorrow we fight. H. Margot read the note 3 times. Then she ate the soup. It tasted like memories she did not know she had. Childhood warmth. Kitchen conversations. The knowledge that someone was looking out for her. The baby kicked again, as if in approval. She was not alone. She had never been alone. She had simply forgotten that there were people worth trusting. After the soup, she returned to the case files. Read until dawn. Let the anger rebuild. Let the purpose return. And somewhere around 5 in the morning, she found something everyone had missed. A clause in the original prenuptial draft. Not the one Preston had her sign in front of witnesses. The original draft his lawyers had prepared before those witnesses arrived. This draft offered Margot significant protection. Any assets acquired during marriage split 50-50. Any fraud committed by either party resulting in full forfeiture to the other. And crucially, any attempt to divorce without mutual consent triggers an automatic audit. Preston believed he had destroyed this draft. Margot remembered him making a show of it, tearing up the paper, throwing it in the fireplace, making her feel grateful that he trusted her enough not to need protection. See, he had said, this isn't about money, this is about love. I don't need a contract to know you're not after my fortune. She had cried, actually cried, moved by his supposed trust. But what he did not know was that she had already signed it that morning, before he arrived. His own lawyers had asked her to sign just to show her agreement in principle, and she had emailed herself a copy to her personal Gmail. The account Preston did not know existed, the one linked to her childhood email address, not her married name. The original prenuptial agreement still existed in digital form, time-stamped, unalterable, sitting on a server somewhere, waiting to be found. Preston had not just committed fraud, he had created the very weapon that would destroy him. Dawn broke over Manhattan. Golden light streamed through the windows. The first light of a new day, a new chance. Margot picked up her phone and called Claudia. I found something, she said. Call an emergency meeting. I know how we win. The conference room at Constance's law firm smelled of coffee and expensive leather. Mahogany table, high-back chairs. The kind of room where million-dollar decisions were made. The kind of room where lives were decided. Claudia sat at one end of the table, Rosie at the other, Harriet in the corner, watching everything with sharp eyes, missing nothing. Constance stood at the head of the table. Behind her, a screen displayed the prenuptial draft Margot had found, the document that would change everything. "Let me explain what we're looking at," Constance began. Her voice carried absolute certainty, the certainty of someone who knew they were about to prevail. "This is the original draft of the prenuptial agreement between Margot Sinclair and Preston Ashworth. It was signed by Miss Sinclair on June 14th, the morning of her wedding. It was emailed to her personal Gmail account at 9:47 in the morning on that same day. But Preston had her sign a different version at the wedding," Claudia said. "In front of witnesses, a version with different terms. He did. A version with significantly reduced protections for Miss Sinclair. A version that eliminated the fraud clause. A version that made divorce much easier for him and much harder for her," Constance smiled. "But here's the thing about contract law. The first signed agreement takes precedence unless both parties explicitly void it and sign a replacement with full knowledge of what they are giving up. Preston never voided the original. He just pretended it didn't exist," Margot said, understanding, settling over her. "Exactly. And Miss Sinclair never signed anything that gave up her rights under the original agreement, which means legally the original prenuptial is still valid. The second version is unenforceable." Rosie leaned forward. "What does that mean for the Wyoming divorce?" "It means the divorce is invalid, not only because of the forged signature, although that alone is grounds for criminal charges, but because the original prenuptial requires mutual consent and an automatic financial audit before any divorce can proceed." Constance pointed to a clause on the screen. "Preston never conducted that audit. He never obtained mutual consent. He simply forged the documents and filed anyway." "Criminal charges," Harriet repeated. Her voice held something very close to satisfaction. "What kind?" "Fraud, multiple counts, identity theft, tax evasion, wire fraud across international borders, forgery, conspiracy, perjury, since he lied under oath on the divorce filing." Constance ticked them off on her fingers. "And here is the beautiful part. The fraud clause in the original prenuptial states that any attempt to defraud either party results in full forfeiture of all assets to the victim." She looked at Margot. "Preston didn't hide his money from his wife. He transferred his entire fortune to her, in writing, with documentation, believing he was framing her for his crimes. But all he actually did was sign over everything he owns." Margot's hand rested on the table. Her signature glowed on the screen behind Constance, the same handwriting that appeared on every forged document Preston had created. But this signature was real. This document was legitimate. This paper was her weapon. "The signature on the original prenuptial," Margot said slowly. "Can you prove it's authentic?" "We can do better than prove it. We can compare it to the signatures on the offshore accounts and shell company documents. Every forgery expert in the country will confirm it. The prenuptial signature is real, and everything else is a fabrication." Constance's expression turned decisive. "Preston didn't just commit fraud. He created a perfect paper trail documenting his own fraud. He did our work for us." Rosie made a sound that was almost a laugh. "He was too clever for his own good." "They usually are." Constance turned to Margot. "Miss Sinclair, with your permission, I'd like to file a motion to void the Wyoming divorce and pursue criminal charges against Preston Ashworth. I'd also like to file a countersuit claiming all assets currently registered in your name as rightfully yours under the terms of the original prenuptial agreement." "File everything," Margot said. Her voice was steady, strong. "A different person from the woman who had crawled into the hospital 10 days ago. I want him to understand what it feels like to have everything taken away." But Preston would not go quietly. They all knew that. 2 days later, his lawyers countersued. They claimed the original prenuptial draft was fabricated. They demanded Margot undergo psychiatric evaluation. They scheduled emergency hearings. They flooded the courts with paperwork. The press coverage intensified. Preston's media team was earning every dollar. Each day brought new stories about Margot's alleged instability. New sources close to the family describing her erratic behavior. New photographs designed to make her appear unhinged. Then, unexpectedly, help arrived from the last place Margot would ever have anticipated. Her phone rang on a Wednesday morning. Unknown number. She almost did not answer. "Miss Sinclair," a man's voice, older, gruff. The voice of someone who did not waste words. "This is Bennett Ashworth, Preston's father." Margot's heart stopped. then started again, racing. What do you want? What I want is complicated. A long pause, heavy breathing on the other end. What I'm willing to give you is simpler. The truth. Why would you help me? Preston is your son. N. Preston is my disappointment. Bennett's voice hardened. I built Ashworth Holdings from nothing. My father was a dock worker. My mother cleaned houses. Every penny the family has, I earned with my own hands. I built an empire from the ground up, and I watched my son turn it into a house of cards. Watched him lie and cheat and manipulate. Watched him destroy anyone who stood in his way, including you. Another pause. I tried to warn you before the wedding. I told you Preston had a darkness in him, but you were in love. You didn't want to hear it. Margot remembered that conversation. A quiet moment at the rehearsal dinner, Bennett pulling her aside, his face serious, his eyes weary. Preston is complicated, he had said. More complicated than you know. I hope you can handle what's coming. She had assumed he was simply being a protective father. Now she understood what he had really been telling her. What are you offering? She asked. I'll testify against my own son. Tell the court everything I know about the financial fraud, the hidden accounts, the forged documents. Tell them about a pattern of behavior going back 20 years. Bennett's voice caught. It won't undo what he did to you. Nothing can. But maybe it can help you take back what's yours. Why? Why would you do this? Silence for a long moment. When Bennett spoke again, his voice was very quiet. Because my wife is gone. Because I'm 72 years old and won't be here forever. Because I don't want to die knowing that everything I built was used to hurt innocent people. Because I failed Preston as a father and cannot fix that now, but I can at least stop enabling him. He paused. And because you're carrying my grandchild. That baby deserves better than what Preston is willing to give. After she hung up the phone, Margot sat quietly with the thought that had surfaced. I didn't just survive, she realized. I found strength in places I never thought to look. The war wasn't over, but the tide was turning, and for the first time Margot could see the shore. Labor started at the worst possible moment. Margot was in a conference room at Constance's firm. 3 lawyers, 2 forensic accountants. Stacks of documents for the court filing scheduled the following morning. The final preparation before the battle that would decide everything. The first contraction struck at 2:15 in the afternoon. A tightening across her belly, pressure building and releasing. She dismissed it. Braxton Hicks, false labor. She still had 3 weeks until her due date. The second contraction came at 2:22. Stronger, longer, harder to ignore. The third contraction came at 2:28. Her water broke. The ambulance ride to Mount Sinai was a blur. Sirens, speed bumps, medical staff, trying to sound calm, while clearly concerned that the baby was arriving too early. Margot clutching her belly, whispering, please, not yet, just a few more days. Dr. Whitmore met them at the entrance, 3 weeks early, not unusual given what you've been through. But we need to be careful. How are the contractions? Terrible, Margot gasped. Wonderful, I honestly don't know. 14 hours of labor followed. 14 hours of pain and exhaustion and fear and hope tangled together. 14 hours of nurses monitoring readings and doctors measuring progress, and Margot wondering if she could truly do this. Harriet arrived at hour 6. She refused to leave. I've negotiated with unions, the mob, and 3 separate mayors, she said, settling into the chair beside Margot's bed. I can certainly handle some breathing exercises. Margot laughed despite the pain. Have you ever been present for a birth before? No, but I'm far too old to let inexperience slow me down. The contractions intensified. Each one took Margot's breath away. Wave after wave of pressure, the smell of antiseptic and effort filled the room. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. Harriet's papery hand held hers, steadier than Margot had expected, stronger than it looked. I'm scared, Margot admitted during a brief pause between contractions. Not of the birth, of what comes after. What if Preston wins? What if he takes her? What if I fight this hard and lose anyway? Harriet squeezed her hand. Then you'll have fought, and that matters. Even in loss, the fighting matters. It tells them we're not easy prey. She paused. But you're not going to lose. I didn't invest in losers when I was building my empire, and I don't invest in them now. At 2:47 in the morning on January 19th, Louise entered the world. 7 pounds 3 ounces. Perfect fingers, perfect toes, a full head of dark hair, and lungs that could wake the entire maternity ward. Margot held her daughter for the first time. This tiny, screaming, extraordinary creature. The reason for everything. The motivation behind every battle she had fought and every battle still to come. "Hello, Louise," she whispered. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm your mom. I'm sorry you're entering such a complicated world, but I promise you this. I will never stop fighting for you. Never." Louise stopped crying. Her eyes opened, dark blue as all newborns are. They would probably shift to brown later, like her mother's, but for now they stared up at Margot with an intensity that seemed impossible for someone 12 minutes old. "I'm not running," Margot thought. "Not anymore. This little girl is going to grow up knowing her mother fought, that her mother stayed." The moment of peace lasted exactly 12 hours. At 3 in the afternoon, while Margot was still learning to breastfeed and figuring out what each new sound meant, a process server arrived at the hospital. Preston had filed an emergency custody motion. He wanted Margot declared mentally unfit. He wanted temporary custody of Louise pending psychiatric evaluation. He wanted his daughter 12 hours after her birth. "We knew this was coming," Claudia said, arriving at the hospital an hour later. "We prepared for this." "I know, but knowing and living it are different things." Margot held Louise closer. The baby made a small sound, not a cry, just a quiet murmur, a reminder of everything at stake. "The hearing is in 3 days," Claudia continued. "Constance is already working on it. We have Bennett's testimony. We have the forensic evidence. We have everything we need. Will it be enough?" Claudia did not answer right away. That silence frightened Margot more than anything else. "I don't know," Claudia finally said, "but I know we're about to find out." 3 days later, Margot stood in a Manhattan courtroom. 3 days postpartum, stitches still healing, body exhausted, but her mind was sharp, her resolve was absolute. Louise slept in a carrier against her chest, a tiny warm presence, a heartbeat against her heartbeat. The reason she was standing here instead of hiding. Preston sat at the opposite table. Expensive suit, expensive lawyers. The look of a man who expected to win because men like him always had. His father sat in the gallery, Bennett Ashworth, 72 years old, gray hair, tired eyes, ready to speak against his own son. The judge entered. The Honorable Margaret Chen, 61 years old, known for caring more about evidence than reputation. Preston's lawyer spoke first. They painted a portrait of a mentally unstable woman who had abandoned her husband, who had made baseless accusations, who was clearly unfit to care for a newborn. They used the word unstable 17 times, Margot counted. Then Constance spoke. She presented the original prenuptial agreement. She explained the fraud clause. She walked through the offshore accounts and shell companies, the forged signatures and false documents. She explained how Preston had used his wife's identity to conceal his wealth and intended for her to bear the consequences of his crimes. She called Rosie Patterson to testify. The young accountant explained the paper trail in clear, precise terms. Numbers were her language, and she spoke it fluently. She called Bennett Ashworth. The old man walked to the witness stand. His eyes met Preston's for a single moment. Father and son, a relationship that would never recover from this day. Then Bennett looked away. "Mr. Ashworth," Constance began, "please tell the court about your son's pattern of financial fraud." Bennett spoke for 45 minutes. About the lies, the manipulation, the other women before Margot, the other schemes before this one. A lifetime of conduct that had built and built until it reached this moment. When he finished, Preston's lawyers had no answer. They tried to object, tried to argue irrelevance, but the damage was done. The judge called a recess. 30 minutes. Enough time for Margot to feed Louise. Enough time for her heart to slow from its frantic pace. When court reconvened, Judge Chen delivered her ruling. "Based on the evidence presented, I find Mr. Ashworth's custody petition to be without merit. The forensic evidence of financial fraud is compelling. The testimony from his own father is damning. And the so-called evidence of Miss Sinclair's mental instability appears to be entirely fabricated." The gavel rose. All of Mr. Ashworth's assets, including those fraudulently hidden in Miss Sinclair's name, are hereby awarded to Miss Sinclair. Criminal charges will be referred to the district attorney. The custody petition is denied with prejudice. The gavel fell. The sound echoed through the courtroom. Wood against wood. Final. Absolute. Like a door closing forever on her old life. Margot stood perfectly still. Louise stirred against her chest. The world kept turning. She had won. After everything, she had won. 3 months later, spring, New York was warming. The last patches of snow melting from Central Park. The trees were budding. The air smelled like possibility, like new beginnings. Margot stood in the lobby of the building on Fifth Avenue. The Penthouse building, the place where she had been thrown out barefoot in the snow, the place where her old life had ended. Louise was in her arms. 3 months old now, brown eyes that had darkened from their newborn blue, dark hair that curled at the ends, a personality already taking shape. Stubborn, determined, her mother's daughter. Jerome stood behind the front desk, the same doorman who had watched her be expelled that December night, the same man whose daughter had helped save her. His eyes glistened as he saw her now. "Welcome home, Miss Sinclair," he said. His voice wavered slightly. "Welcome home." 2 words, a simple phrase, but it meant everything. "Thank you, Jerome." Margot reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you for everything." She stepped into the elevator, the same elevator that had carried her down to the lobby, the same elevator where she had seen her reflection and not recognized herself. The doors closed, the elevator rose. Floor by floor, the numbers climbing like a countdown to her new life. When the doors opened again, she was standing in the penthouse, her penthouse now. Every piece of art on the walls, the Monet in the living room, the Picasso in the hallway, the contemporary sculptures she had never liked but Preston had insisted on keeping. Every piece of furniture, the Italian leather sofas, the antique writing desk, the dining table that seated 20 for the parties they used to host, every crystal chandelier, every silk curtain, every marble surface, every designer lamp, hers, all of it hers. $212 million in assets, 17 shell companies, real estate in 3 countries, a shipping empire that had been in the Ashworth family for generations, and all of it hers now. Standing in the living room, surrounded by police officers and moving boxes, were Preston and Vivian. They had 30 minutes to collect personal items. That was what the court order said. 30 minutes under police escort and nothing more. Preston turned when the elevator arrived. His face was pale, thinner than it had been. 3 months of legal battles and criminal charges had taken their toll. He looked older, diminished, like something slowly deflating. "Margot," he said her name like a curse. "Preston." Vivian stood behind him, no longer glowing, no longer confident. Her pregnancy was advancing, but she looked exhausted, beaten. Her designer clothes hung loosely on her. The smile that had mocked Margot in December was nowhere to be found. "You think you've won?" Preston asked. His voice trembled with barely contained fury. "You think this is over? I'll appeal. I'll fight. I'll drag this out for years." Margot did not flinch, did not look away, did not let him see any fear. "I don't think anything, Preston. I know." She stepped further into the room, her bare feet on the marble floor, the same floor she had stood on 3 months ago. "I know you tried to destroy me. I know you almost succeeded. I know you threw me out barefoot in the snow while I was 8 months pregnant with your child." She paused, let the words land. "And I know you're going to spend the next 15 years in federal prison thinking about the woman you threw out barefoot in the snow." Preston's jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists. For a moment, Margot thought he might move toward her, but the officers shifted closer. A quiet reminder that he was no longer in charge. "Preston," Vivian said. Her voice was thin, frightened. The voice of someone who had finally understood she had bet on the wrong person. "Preston, do something." Preston said nothing. For once in his life, complete silence. The 30 minutes passed. The moving boxes were filled with what little they were permitted to take. Personal items only, nothing of real value, nothing that mattered. The police officers escorted them to the elevator. Preston looked back once. His eyes met Margot's. There was hatred there, but underneath it, something else. Something that looked almost like respect, almost like recognizing an equal. Then the elevator doors closed, and he was gone. Margot moved through the penthouse, room by room, touching the walls, running her fingers over the surfaces, remembering the living room where they had celebrated their engagement, the kitchen where they had cooked together on slow Sundays, The bedroom where they had made love, where they had conceived Louise. All of it tainted now. All of it marked by the knowledge of what he had been planning while she was happy. But also hers to remake, to reimagine, to transform into something entirely new. She stopped in the nursery, the room she had designed for a different life. Soft yellow walls, carefully chosen furniture, a mobile hanging over the crib, waiting for a baby who had finally arrived. Louise made a sound, a happy little gurgle, as if approving of her new surroundings. "What do you think, baby girl?" Margot whispered. "Not bad, right?" Louise grabbed at her mother's hair. "Agreement enough." The doorbell rang. Margot answered it. Harriet stood in the hallway, 80 years old, still fierce, still formidable, still Chanel. Behind her, Claudia and Rosie waited with champagne. "First time in this penthouse," Harriet said, stepping inside. Her eyes swept the room, taking inventory, approving. "Not bad for a napkin investment." Margot laughed. For the first time in months, a real laugh. Full and genuine and free. "I have something for you." She retrieved an envelope from the counter. Inside, a check. Every cent Harriet had loaned her, plus interest, plus a bonus for believing when no one else did. Harriet looked at the check, then tore it in half. "Consider it a graduation present," she said, "from one determined woman to another." "I can't accept that. It's too much." "You can, and you will." Harriet's voice left no room for debate. "I didn't help you because I expected payment. I helped you because watching the powerful get what they deserve is better than any return on investment. And because family is family, even when we're strangers." Margot set the torn check aside. Claudia opened the champagne. Rosie poured glasses for everyone except the nursing mother. They stood together by the window, the city stretching out below them like a map of everything still possible. Central Park green and alive, the sunset painting the sky in gold and soft pink. "What will you do now?" Harriet asked. Margot considered the question. She had been so focused on surviving, on fighting, on winning, that she had not thought much about what came afterward. "I'm going to raise my daughter," she said finally. "I'm going to rebuild my life. I'm going to remember what it feels like to be happy. And maybe someday I'll help other women in situations like mine. Women who married predators, women who lost everything, women who need someone to believe in them when the world refuses to." "That sounds like a good start." They watched the sunset in silence. 4 women, different ages, different backgrounds, a shared understanding of what it meant to be underestimated, what it meant to fight back, what it meant to prevail. Louise began to fuss, hungry. Margot had learned to read the signs. "I should feed her," Margot said. "Thank you, all of you, for everything." Harriet reached out and touched Margot's cheek, a gesture so tender it was startling from someone so fierce. "Your mother would be proud of you," she said quietly. "I know we didn't end on good terms, but if she could see you now, see what you've become, she would be so proud." Then they were gone. The elevator doors closing behind them, leaving Margot alone with her daughter and her victory and the golden light painting the windows. Later that night, Louise sleeping in the nursery, Margot stood at the window again. The city glowed beneath her, millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of stories. Some joyful, some painful, some just beginning. He thought he was getting rid of dead weight, she realized. Turns out I was the only thing keeping him afloat, and now I own the ocean. The thought made her smile. 1 year later, December, the anniversary. Snow drifted over Manhattan, light flakes falling from a gray sky. The same kind of snow that had fallen the night everything changed. Margot bundled Louise in cashmere, a warm coat, soft boots, mittens with small bears on them. Everything her mother had been denied on that terrible night. They walked together on Fifth Avenue, mother and daughter. The same street where Margot had stumbled barefoot. The same sidewalk where she had collapsed. The same corner where a stranger had called for help. The city was dressed for Christmas. Lights in every window, trees on every corner, the smell of chestnuts and warm drinks and possibility. Louise pointed at the snowflakes. She was walking now, unsteady but determined. Her mother's daughter in every way. "Mama, cold." "Not for us, baby girl. Not anymore." They passed a pharmacy. A woman huddled against the wall, a different pharmacy than before. A different woman, but the desperation was the same. The look of someone who had lost everything. Margot stopped, knelt down. met the woman's eyes. "There's a shelter on 42nd Street," she said. "Street hands, tell them Margot sent you. They'll take care of you." She pressed $200 into the woman's hand. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "God bless you. Stay warm. It gets better. I promise." Margot stood, took Louise's hand, walked on. The revolving doors of the penthouse building spun. Margot walked through, head high, daughter warm, home waiting. Jerome smiled from behind the desk. "Welcome back, Miss Sinclair." "Good to be back, Jerome." The elevator rose. The doors opened. The penthouse spread out before them. Louise ran inside, giggling, exploring, finding new corners and new wonders. Margot stood in the doorway one moment longer, one more breath. The Christmas tree twinkled in the corner. She had decorated it herself this year. Red and gold ornaments, white lights, a crystal star on top. But this tree held different memories now. Not the bitter taste of betrayal, the quiet, steady promise of new beginnings. She stepped inside, into her home, into her life, into the future she had built from the ruins of everything she had lost. Outside, the snow continued to fall, soft and gentle, covering the city in white. But Margot was inside now, safe now, warm now, home. She did not look back. And that is how a woman who was thrown out barefoot in the snow became the owner of everything her husband tried to steal. If this story moved you, if you felt her pain and cheered for her victory, I have one small request. Hit that like button. It tells me you want more stories like this one. Drop a comment below. Tell me what moment made you the angriest, what made you cry, what made you cheer. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it is never too late to fight back. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications, because every week I bring you stories of women who refuse to stay down. Thank you for listening. Until next time.